I've been through some really, really hard, challenging moments, from losing family members that I love to betrayals to nearly losing my life, things like that really shook the way that I perceived life, because the like knocking of the universe at the door saying, hey, things are impermanent. Boom, 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 boom. This is impermanent. Change is real. Change is constant. These kind of universal laws, if you will, like gravity. All these things can be bent depending on the worldview that you come from, but essentially these deeper truths that there is change. And the challenge that a lot of people have is they get really attached to who they think they are, what they identify with. And so when change comes for someone that hasn't cultivated an orientation to change, it can be really challenging. This is when we talk about the loss of a parent, the birth of a child, a midlife crisis. These are the things that normally initiate people in the mainstream world. But what's happening on the planet right now is people are being initiated right and left that don't have a context for what's actually happening to them. Like that, the reality, oh wow, you're in an initiation. What does that mean? That means you're shifting a previous version of yourself into a new version of yourself. And you don't have a context for it. You don't have the orientation within consciousness itself to say, oh, I'm moving from this old version of myself into a new, because you were so identified with that version of yourself, you don't have any other context. And so I think this is happening on a mass scale, because that change that I'm talking about is knocking at the door of humanity. It's saying, hey, you can't keep going like this. You can't keep doing these unsustainable things. You can't keep going in the same way that you've been going. Eventually, reality is going to kick in. You know, I remember a story, a friend of mine who, I was living in New York at the time, and she was in the fashion industry. And there was a meeting, and they were like, we need more blah, blah, blah. And they were like, there are no more blah, blah, blahs. And there was like this silence, you know, like the species literally went extinct that they were like harvesting. And there was silence in the room. That's when she knew she needed to get out of that industry. And then they just went on with their meeting. You know, it's like those kinds of things. You know, we're going to get to a point where there's irrefutable change that that aspect of the identity that would cling and hold to the safety blanket of, this is who I am, this is what I believe, and this is what I do, and this is what I choose, and you can't tell me what to do or what behave. Like, life is like, you know what? Yes, sorry. Boom, 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 boom. Knocking at your door, change is inevitable. And so what I think the opportunity for the maturation of humanity is to actually work with this energy of change and see how we can utilize it for the betterment of all. That's my feeling, is that there's a big wave of initiations coming for varying people at varying stages in their spiritual journey, in their human journey, in their journey with healing, in their journey with relationships, in our relationship to the earth, and to a higher power, whatever that is for you. So I think being really honest with ourselves around the things that we do to avoid pain, to grasp the pleasure, all ways of coping with the reality that change and impermanence are just part of life, and how we can build the tools to be able to adapt and adjust and cope with significant shifts. The way I see it is that our present culture is unsustainable, and that there's inevitable shifts coming, and so it's time to really get on board and see what we can do to harmonize the change. This is what ancient cultures, especially in Asia, you know, the Zen gardens, they work with the principles of nature. They're working with how things already are at a reality level, at a natural level, and a joining with it, aligning with it. And from there, the human finds harmony as well. When we go against nature and we try to overlay our mental constructs around how it's supposed to be, there's an inevitable breaking point, whether the body gives out, whether a structure collapses in an earthquake, whatever it is. If we impose too much of our idea about how things should be versus listening deeply to how things are, we get into trouble. And so I think there's an amazing opportunity for us as a species to get on board with nature and her intelligent design, and align and join and meet it, because there's so much opportunity. There's actually, you know, we have all the food that we need on the planet to feed everyone. It's just the systems suck. You know, so all the solutions that everyone's worried about, all the things that they're imposing their construct around how things can be better, what would happen if we started to just listen more to her? What would happen if we listened to what's really real, what's really happening at a profound and even scientific level. What's the change that's actually occurring on our planet right now, and how can we align with it? How can we be honest with ourselves and the collective around what those changes mean for our lives and the culture that we were previously brought up on, maybe the cultures that we got used to that are so consumptive. They weren't considering nature. They weren't considering these things that are inevitably going to be knocking at our doorstep, knocking on our door and saying, hey, can't keep going this way. You can try to fight it. It's going to hurt whether you fight it or not. So we might as well get on board and start to align with it and harmonize with it and find the tools to cope and adjust and move in the direction that the river's flowing.